Before I get started, I'll talk a little bit about me. I guess he just kind of did that. I'm going to move quickly just because time has been flowing. My background, I'm a software engineer. I'm a node operator. Most of my background is in more traditional tech startup-y stuff and consumer product mostly. So whereas like Ramana is like teaching machines to talk to machines and prove themselves to each other, I'm a lot more familiar with building products for humans to use and then kind of bridging the gap with the computer. Rocket Suite at a high level is a tool for node operators to help like look at their rewards and claim them. It was kind of me scratching a lot of my own itches at first. The two big ones were, it's fun to have a little thing you can bookmark and check how your node's doing. Like I wanted to see the number going up. As it was accumulating rewards, I wanted to see that. That top image is what AI gives you when you say, stressfully check your phone for something. This is what it spits out. The other big issue was once you start having a lot of mini pools, if you're lucky enough to have that problem, it's hard to manually distribute all of them. And so doing that in like an organized way and ideally in a gas efficient way was kind of like the other big problem I was trying to solve. So I'm going to now show you how to use Rocket Suite, which is this website that I created to solve these two problems for myself and then decided to share with the rest of you. First, you can view your rewards. So this is the sort of one card view, and on like a mobile phone, this is how it'll show. So when you find your node on the site, this will be on the left-hand side, or on the phone, it'll be the whole screen. And I recommend just bookmarking this on your phone or wherever, and that's what you can just load up and be like, cool, still going, numbers going up. If you mouse over a bunch of stuff, there's all sorts of neat little hints and things it can show you. You can see the split with rETH and yours and how that's all going through. So one of my goals here was to sort of like teach a little bit about how it works for people who don't necessarily get in the weeds of how the flows come in and how it gets divvied up. There's also this nice little overlay if you hover on the RPL and like what the current ratio is and how you're doing and if you need to top it up or not. I'll just flag, most of you, I assume, don't have cards that would look quite this lovely. So that's I think for a lot of people, that's going to be one of the main uses of the Rocket Suite. It's just kind of a nice, you don't have to log in, you don't have to connect a wallet, you can do it on devices you don't trust, whatever. It's not really doing anything, it's just read only. It's only pulling data from a blockchain provider. There's a slide later where I'll talk a little bit about some of the safety and security things around this. But at this point, what I've shown you is, I think for a lot of people, what they'll just use it for, just seeing what's going on. But you can also use Rocket Suite to claim rewards. Again, this will be on the right-hand side of the page when you're looking at your node. These are like at the top are the periodic rewards, which are like every 28 days or so, you get a bunch of stuff. And then at the bottom are the continuous things. It's like as the beacon chain issues things, this is where it'll show up. So for some people, you can just one by one go through your mini pools and distribute them. You can also claim and or stake individual reward epics. And this is sort of, I'll call this like one by one claiming. I'll get to in a second the thing called sweeping, which is what the name's for, which lets you kind of do them in a set. But for some people, if you had like if you just want to grab one of your mini pools, you can do that one by one in here. The top right, you can't see it, but there's a connect your wallet, and then you can just click on each one and distribute them. It also does nice little things to sort of show you, I can't really see it, but you see down there, like when you hover over the distribute button, it tries to give you a little bit of a hint of like, here's what you're going to get based on gas. Here's probably the efficiency of doing that now versus waiting for later. There's other things in here that as you kind of go through it, if you start using it, you'll start seeing like as you're finalizing a mini pool, if you sort of have to shut it down, it kind of helps you go through that process too. So sweeping. So in a world where, again, you have the happy problem of way too many mini pools to like do the bookkeeping and the haranguing of like, oh, which one should I do next? And how do I pick which mini pools are ready to be swept or claimed from? And how do I organize it in a way that's sort of sensible? That's what sweeping is. So again, let me go back for a second. At the top there, you see there's that weird sweep button with a little like settings, little widget to the left of it. If you tap on that little widget, you'll see something that looks like this. So this is letting you, across all of your mini pools, there's different kinds of things you can do to claim against it. And sometimes this is like the most complicated view you can possibly see in Rocket Sweep. So this can be scary the first time you see it. But as you start pulling those dials around and checking the boxes, it kind of explains on the right-hand side what you're creating. And what you're creating is this batch of transactions that you're going to execute, which is distribute a bunch of these, claim these intervals. If you have nodes that need to be finalized, it'll finalize those. So like there's all these different things that you may want to do in a set. So if you're operating against larger batches of mini pools, this can be really helpful. There's some cleverness in that consensus one where there's the threshold and batch size. So this is Thomas's, I think. And so he's got the happy problem where you can't actually do 800 or so mini pools in a single transaction. Just the gas limits get problematic. So which 200 do you do first? And so it does like sensible things like sorting the most profitable ones to the top and letting you set the batch size. There is some strategy around, and like actually if you go into trading, people have all sorts of theories about when and how you should claim or compound your gains. There's a whole theory that you don't need to do any of this. Just wait for the 1 ETH threshold to hit and you don't have to touch this. And that's totally a valid strategy. An upside to this is you can claim more frequently if you're going across enough and the gas is friendly in that way. This does some of the same stuff as the other one where when you're about to issue this sweep, it'll say in the top, like roughly what's going to happen, what you should expect to receive. And so this kind of lets you give a little confidence about what's going to happen. I should have said this first. A huge caveat to this is your withdrawal address needs to be a safe to use Rocket Sweep for batch transactions. So you can do this, you can use the viewing, just looking at your node, seeing how it's doing, regardless of your setup. You can be on all nodes, you can be running in your basement, you can have your withdrawal address set to a weird split contract, you can still pull up the node address and just see what's sitting there. But to actually issue a sweep, what this is doing is it's going to batch up the transactions and then send it off to the safe transaction service, which is what the Gnosis safe uses to propose a transaction to your multi-sig, which then has like its own neat, nice tooling. I have no affiliation with them, but they let you simulate the transaction, confirm that I'm not full of shit when I say all this stuff on here. There's nice things there. So there's like, if you are familiar with safes and multi-sigs, then this is a great tool to use. If you're not, consider getting familiar with safes before trying to do anything like this. Just because it's its own kind of thing to get your head around. Like create one on a L2 that's cheap and just play around with some stuff. This is a little bit of obviously this is your mini pool, so you don't want to like screw around with it anyways. But so to actually sweep, you do need a safe, if that wasn't clear. Some facts, and I'm happy to take questions in a second, but some facts about this are some common questions are, what are the gas savings of doing this? Like, what do I save by like batching them all? My rule of thumb is like 20 to 30% if you have enough mini pools to make it make sense. If you have less than 10, it doesn't always make sense. If you have less than 3, it almost certainly doesn't make sense. It does theoretically, like if you kind of look through it, but some people like to use it even if they have like 5 or so, because it still is just like a bookkeeping single transaction to execute. It can just be nice for keeping things organized. But you'll see the biggest gains the more you have. And in terms of like comparing it to mega pools are going to be awesome. If this gives you, say, like best case 30% savings, this mega pools will give you 98 to 99% savings. So it's just a totally different thing. So one obvious next iteration for Rocket Sweep will be, I'm not going to change the name, but the sweeping will probably be less relevant in a mega pool world. So whatever features need to be sort of built into this to support that, although the transition might be slow. So this is a slide. Again, I asked AI, like, talk about safety. And so this is what it kind of spit out. But so some of the things to think about, and my habit with crypto stuff is when I'm playing with the protocol, I tend to make my own little interfaces to things to kind of get my head around the protocol and how it works and things like that. And so this one I happen to share and publish. But it's very nerve-wracking to put out a website that and you encourage people to connect their wallet to, issue high-value transactions against. Because one, if I screw up, that sucks, and like there's real liability and other things there. 2, it makes me a target personally. Someone like compromises me or my security stuff, they can infect the front end of Rocket Sweep, and that's something that you all should be concerned about. And then there's also things of like the RPC provider I'm using to pull data from is another like kind of attack vector to be concerned about. The first time I came out with this, I got a couple like anonymous messages like, hey, how are you doing this? Is there some way I can do, like basically asking for all of those things to be sort of addressed. So it's all open source. I would actually encourage you to try checking out the source code and running it yourself locally. All it needs is an RPC provider, which is in the environment file. You can set your own. The other sources of data are when the reward epics are published. They go to IPFS sometimes. Lately, there have been some issues. So there's like it has to pull the rewards files. It uses the data on chain to verify that they're good. So there is some trust there, or there's some verification there. There's another one. Oh, and also Patches and Invis have like a ongoing rewards tree for the current epic that it's using to give you that little preview. If you've ever used it, it gives you a little preview of the upcoming one. I'm not generating any of that data. And then last of all, there's also a hosted version of this on IPFS itself. So like Rocket Sweep itself lives on rocketsweep.eth.link, I think. The only downside is I don't have it automatically publishing there every time we do changes, so I think it's a couple of versions old. Trying to think of other security things. I think that's it. The last slide, I was going to just talk a little bit about like my hit list of things that are on my backlog that I'd like to get to eventually. It's relatively short. Mostly there's a big performance refactor that I've just been putting off until there's more compelling reasons to work on it. For most people, it doesn't matter, but if you have hundreds of mini pools, it does take a couple seconds to load. So there's ways to make that much faster. There's reacting to all the cool stuff coming in Houston? Or, I don't know where we landed on that. Depends if you're in New York. And then so one of my goals for this talk was also to get some feedback from everybody about what their wish list for features and things on it are. But I'll take a round of applause first.